And as I introduce Ben, he can go ahead and make his way up on the stage. So Ben is, as a marriage and family educator, Ben helps couples understand and live out the biblical picture of family in their homes, churches, and neighborhoods. He is a national conference speaker on marriage with family life, an adjunct professor on marriage and the family at Western Seminary, and is currently working on a YouTube channel on parenting called Family Practice. Ben and his wife, Janet, have 3 college-age children, and they live in Wilsonville, Oregon. So please help me welcome Ben. Super excited to hear more about how to cultivate joy in parenting.
Thank you. Well, that was me and the clan at our favorite place, which is called Cheryl's on 12th. I don't know if you've been downtown Portland at all. We get in there a little bit. It's changed a little bit, hasn't it? But we get in there, and so that's one of our favorite places. And I was just it's so weird. We're at the stage where we just don't get together very much anymore, and it's frustrating. We're in that season. So to look at that picture and actually go, gosh, we actually sat down at a table together. We actually had a meal together is kind of a cool thing. So, well, it's a real privilege for me to be here this morning. I love this whole thing. I was talking with the ladies beforehand, and I just think the idea for you all to get together with some like-minded folks who are in the same spot in life where you're trying to raise your kids, there's some great stuff about it. There's some really hard stuff about it. So I just think this whole idea of Mom to Mom is great. And by the way, you've got the best snacks in the city. I'm telling you. When you go to discussion time, I'm going to sample everything, okay? And might even have 2. So if you want to make sure you get snacks for your table, you better go first, okay? I just want you to know that I'm a little intimidated to speak to this group because being a dad and having a wife and watching her as a mom, she does most of the heavy lifting in our household. And I know as moms, you do most of the heavy lifting in your household. And so for me, as a guy and as a dad, to try to have something to say to a mom, I feel a little bit silly on some level. I feel a bit intimidated. I think God has gifted women as moms to do so much more different things and even deeper things than guys. Dads have their definite roles, and dads are certainly necessary. But I just think it's a privilege to speak to you. You do the bulk of the work and the love and the labor of keeping families together and growing these little kids. So it's just a real privilege for me. You should have a set of notes on your table. And one of the things you're going to note, the first thing that we're going to, or the piece that you want to look at most, really, where is it? It's this one right here. It's the one that's got some blank spots on it. So this is kind of the main outline that I'm going to be working on. And then we're going to look at some handout stuff. As you look at this, you go like, golly, that's a lot of information. I did teach a class at a seminary, so I might geek out a little bit. And some of this will just be kind of to skim over, so that way you have a chance to maybe see it. We might read a few things here, but I know what it's like for you. But when I have something in front of me, if I don't read it and I put it on a pile, I will never read it. So that's why I want us to look at some things together. So you might go, oh, I remember that, and that might help me, so I might come back to that. So as we get started, I'm kind of curious for those of you who've traveled a little bit. Has anyone ever been to Alaska? Wow, quite a few. The very first time I went to Alaska was last spring. Now, I do a lot of traveling, and that was really great for me because it was a chance to pick up my 49th state. I only have one state left, it's Vermont. I can't believe that I still have not been to Vermont, but now that's the only one. And I was blown away at the natural beauty of this state. I mean, flying in, everywhere you looked, it was just phenomenally gorgeous. I would think those of you who've been there know exactly what I'm talking about. And as we were driving, we took a day after our conference to just kind of see the area. And when I saw a live moose in the wild, I became like this idiot. It's like, hey, a moose. There's a meese. It's like, my wife's like, honey, it's okay. It's like, we gotta stop. So we're stopping on the side of the road. I'm running across the traffic with my phone, trying to get a picture and a video of an actual real moose. I just turned to this, she's like, what's wrong with you? But it was just something about being that close to something that beautiful and that majestic was really, really cool. And isn't that interesting about God's creation? When you really think about how beautiful and powerful it is, when you think about the joy that it gives you, if you've stood there and admired God's sunset or some other thing, the reason that we get the joy from it is because we're overwhelmed a little bit by the beauty of what we're seeing, isn't it? I want to show us a couple pictures and see if we can kind of check in with that. I mean, this is taken from the Hubble telescope. This is outer space. This is the heavens that the scriptures talk about that God created. Look at that moon. Isn't that spectacular? And see the stars. I mean, we don't see stars like that very often, do we? But that's all there, most nights of us to see. The aurora borealis, we did not get to see that when we were in Alaska. I was really bummed. We chased it until about 2:30 in the morning and never caught it. But it's just spectacular. What about this? Who would like to have like a summer house right there? Any of us? Yeah. Sunsets. Our daughter, our youngest, loves sunsets. She loves to take pictures, as many sunsets. So when I'm looking at a sunset, I always think of her because they're just so spectacular. Every day, we can see something like this in the sense of the sun going down. What about that? Isn't that spectacular? New England, fall colors. That's just majestic. And then we think about the Grand Canyon. Just the beauty, the color, the relief, the difference there. Who would like to spend a weekend there, like right now? Anybody? Yes, that would be pretty fantastic. To actually be inside water that's that beautiful and that blue. And then we get into some of the created beings. Look at these parakeets. Our son wanted a parakeet at one time. We're like, really? Well, let's check into that. You know that parakeets and parrots live 70 years? We're like, I'm sorry, son, we're not going to keep your parrot while you get married and raise your family. We're not doing that. I'm sorry, That beautiful picture of that tortoise underwater. Look at beautiful blue water. This is our dog, Hershey. Had to throw him in there. He's a Labradoodle, just as spectacular, in my opinion. What about these gorgeous animals? Who's ridden on a horse and been on horses before? Aren't they amazing animals? They're just beautiful creatures. And this, how majestic. I don't know about if any of you saw The Tiger King when it was on Netflix. It was quite a really interesting show. But I think some of us, at least I was like, oh man, wouldn't that be cool to play with baby tigers? I mean, come on, I think we all have a little baby tiger lover in us, don't we? Because it's such a beautiful, majestic animal. You see, God's creation is absolutely fantastic. And when we look at God's creation, we feel an incredible joy because we see the beauty and the majesty and the wonder of what we're looking at. But what I want us to think about this morning is the fact that you are looking at God's beauty every day as you raise your kid. Because it's interesting, out of all the stuff that we talked about, the most significant being and creature that God has made is this one. You see, every human being bears the image and the likeness of God. And what I want to suggest in our time this morning, I want to start off by, first of all, thinking a little bit about that. How is it that by just thinking and reflecting more about our children as the image of God, how can that bring more joy and perspective to our parenting? That's where I want us to start. Then the second thing what I want us to do is I want to think about how is it that helping this image of God grow and develop and becoming the young man or young woman God's designed them to be, how do we find joy in that? Our role at helping this image of God grow and develop. And then lastly, it's just how is it that we can be on this journey as we're raising the image of God? Can we find joy as we go through the process of raising the image of God? So if you're looking on your outline, the thing that we're at right now is just number one, joy in seeing the image of God. And the word there is wonder. I want to suggest 3 verbs for us as we're walking through this. And the idea is that to wonder, to be able to look at our children with a sense of fascination about who they are, who God's made them to be, and who they're going to become. Right now, some of them are a blob. They're just sitting there and they're nursing and taking the life out of you, And some are running around with scissors. And we always say we don't run with scissors in our family. But who are they going to become? Now, I want us to, if you'll let me, I want to geek out a little bit here. If you turn on the next page, I want to look at some principles on the image of God. Like I said, let me just geek out here if I can for a second. It might be that some of you are thinking, okay, Ben, you're trying to tell me I'm raising the image of God in my family. I actually feel like I have the image of the devil sometimes. Does anyone ever feel that? Like you're just kind of raising a little hellion, little demon? Yeah. Well, they are fallen, okay, but ideally, mostly, they are the image of God. Look at some of the scriptures that just kind of inform us about that. This is from Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 and 28. When God's making the world, he makes all the stars, the earth, the water, the trees, all the animals. And on the sixth day, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. And what's interesting is that there's no other creature, no other thing that God has made that bears his image and his likeness. Nothing. All the beautiful things that I showed you on those slides have nothing on the human being because we are somehow like God. And I've got a definition here for you. This my theology professor would be very pleased that I put this in here. But a definition to think about for the image of God is the amazing ability and awesome responsibility to make visible the invisible characteristics of our Creator and Redeemer. And so what's interesting is what we see in our homes that's running around, knocking stuff over, getting things dirty, crying a lot, is actually has this amazing ability to show us what God is like. Man, that's a totally different perspective. Yeah, they got to get their homework done. Yeah, they got to clean up. Yeah, they're going to knock stuff over. Yeah, they're going to do crazy stuff. But you know who they really are? They're the image of God. We are raising the image of God in our homes, who have this amazing ability. Matter of fact, look what David goes on to say. As image bearers of God, we are amazing creatures. He said in Psalm 8, he said, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You who have displayed your splendor above the heavens, from the mouths of infants and nursing babies, you have established strength because of your enemies to do away with the enemy and the vengeful. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars you have set in place. What is man that you think of him, and a son of man that you are concerned about him? Yet you have made him a little lower than God, and you crown him with glory and majesty. You have him rule over the works of your hands. You have put everything under his feet. And what David's doing, it's believed that he was kind of in the night as he was being pursued by one of his enemies, that he's just looking up into the heavens, as we saw some of these pictures, and he's just fascinated by the handiwork and the beauty and the power and the mystery of the creation, and he thinks nothing compares to the human being. God, who are you that you would make us to be something like you? He's just amazed that God would do this. And he asks this question, what is man? You know that phrase, what is man, is on the humanities building at Harvard University. Because humanities used to be about trying to understand the human being, because the human being is so amazingly unique. And this is what David's reflecting on. Human beings are incredibly unique. And that's not the perspective our culture has today. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Look what else he says in Psalm 139. For you created my innermost parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you because I am awesomely and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully formed in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my formless substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. See, what's amazing is that sometimes I can get caught up with all the things my kids are doing wrong, or all the things that I think they're supposed to be doing, or I start looking at my kids and comparing them to other kids, and I have disappointment, and what I forget is my kids are amazing creatures. Not because they're mine, not because my wife and I had nice kids, but because they bear the image and the likeness of God. That's what gives them value. That's what makes them special. Matter of fact, I want us to kind of walk through a couple of these things real quickly. When you look at this idea of God's image, look at all these things. I'm not going to read all of these, but look how sophisticated human beings are. Look at all the things about us as human beings that we will grow and develop into, that your children will actually grow and develop into, that they will get good at and become better in all these areas. I just want to point out a few. They're relational beings. They have the ability to know and experience other people. See, parenting is discipleship, and discipleship is relationship. Your kids are uniquely designed to have a relationship with their mom. And you know what's going to happen through their relationship? They're going to learn about life. They're going to learn about God. They're going to learn about all kinds of things through your relationship, because God's made them to live and be in relationship. They're spiritual. They have the ability to know and experience God. That's why for many of us, we're wanting to really help our kids understand God and learn how to walk with him and know him. They're eternal. They'll live and exist forever in heaven or hell when they die. They're physical, and this is really what's challenging for us today, meaning that they are highly sophisticated, they're integrated, vulnerable, coordinated, and gendered bodies. Our culture today says they're not, right? One of the best things we can do for our children, especially when they're young, is to help them celebrate that you're a little boy or you're a little girl. And God's made you a little boy, and God's made you a little girl. And you know what we can also help them understand is that there are lots and lots and lots of different ways to express yourself as a little boy. And there's lots and lots and lots of ways you can express yourself as a little girl. But you're still a girl, and you're still a boy. And so there's just all these layers to how beautiful and how magical the creatures that are in our home are, that we have a chance to be a part of raising and developing and seeing them actually grow and flourish in our presence. You know, when you look at all these things, you're like, oh my gosh, we're not trying to raise German Shepherds, folks. We are trying to raise the image of God in our home. And that's why it's so incredibly enjoyable when we have those great moments, right? Like, wow, when we see that smile, when we hear that funny comment, when we see them growing, it's like, this is the best place to be. I've got the best seat in the house. But when it's not going well, it really kind of sucks, doesn't it? Yes, because they're so complicated. So I'm hoping that as I just kind of talk about this, I'm trying to help lift our perspective, not to run us down. I hope we don't look at this list and say, oh, I got to develop that too. I mean, really? I'm blowing it here, and I'm blowing it here, and I'm blowing it here. No. This is not about your job, how you're doing as a mom. It's not about their job and how well they're behaving. It's about just wondering at what is growing up in your home. Like, wow, this is a beautiful thing. Well, a couple of points to bear off of that. One, letter A down there says, as bearers of God's image, we all have dignity. In other words, we all have value as God's image. Regardless of how well we perform or how good we are at this or that or compared to other people, we have value. Why? Because we're made in the image of God. And the same with your children. It might be easier to love them when they're cooperating and harder to love them when they're not cooperating. I get that. But their value is not based on whether they're cooperating or not. Their value is based on the fact that they bear the image and likeness of God. The other thing that means is that we want to be valued in spite of our differences or our performances. Isn't that true for you? Don't you want to be loved for who you are, not how well you do something? I do. Well, our kids are the same way. We don't have to be perfect to have value as a person. Do you know that? Do you know that because you, as the image bearer of God, you don't have to be a perfect mom? Do you know that? You don't have to be. That's not where your value comes from. Your value comes from the fact that God made you in his image and his likeness, and you have incredible value and incredible dignity as a human being that way. Well, second thing, letter B, is that as bearers of God's image, we all deserve respect. And I've got a simple definition for respect here. And it's just simply this. To respect is to have proper regard for the nature and value of something. I'm not saying we respect our kids because they're really good at being obedient, or they're really good at making sandwiches, or they're really good at painting their bed. That respect is a different kind. The basic sense of respect is just this. It's that we have a proper regard for the nature and value of something. We have a couple of cars that have what's called a timing belt. Some of you might know these details, but the timing belt on certain cars is like a huge rubber band, and it kind of makes everything run. And certain cars, you have to change that rubber band. And if you don't change that rubber band, it's going to snap. And if that rubber band snaps, it destroys your engine, okay? So it's kind of a big warning. You ought to change your rubber band. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I had 2 cars with a rubber band. And well, I got the switching in my mind backwards. I thought this one needed to be switched at this time, and this one needed to be switched at this time. And so I'm driving in our 2002 Hyundai Sonata, great car, and all of a sudden it just starts coasting. I'm like, what happened? It's like, oh no, this rubber band should have been changed at this time. And it totally snapped. You know what happened is I disrespected how a car works. I didn't realize how the car works. I didn't honor how the car worked. And what happened was, because I didn't respect it, there were some troubles. And so as we start thinking about our children and ourselves as in the image of God, there's certain things that we need to remember based on how people are and how we should treat them. Here's some of them right there in your list. One is we want our emotions acknowledged, not dismissed. Is that true for you? Would you want your emotions acknowledged and not dismissed? Yeah, because you're a human being. We want our thoughts and desires to be understood, not judged. We want our choices to be free, not coerced. We want our efforts to be appreciated, not ignored. We're going to talk more about that. And we want our physical boundaries honored and not intruded. So the big idea I'm just trying to suggest to us is that we realize that, my gosh, if we just look at parenting of trying to get them to do the right thing and stop them from doing the wrong thing, we're going to be really frustrated. Because we're going to constantly be chasing, do the right thing, do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, we're going to have a better relationship, and you might even feel that I like you more. Because if you don't do the right thing, you feel that I don't like you. And what we're saying to our children is that your value comes on how well you perform. And I don't know about you, but I grew up with that. And I'm still trying to get out from under that. And so what we're trying to do is just have a different perspective of our kids. How is it that we value them? And what I want to suggest in this first idea is that you spend more time just being in wonder of your children. Just being in wonder. And here's a simple definition of that. Wonder is a feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful. What I want you to do on that page, on the first page of our notes here, it says application. I want you to write down one thing you enjoy about each of your children. You only get one. Sorry, I know there's a lot. But I want you to identify for each of your kids, what's something you really enjoy about them? I think this is a little bit harder if you've got a nursing child. It's like, well, they just kind of sit there and nurse and sleep and poop and change the diapers. You know, it's what do I, how do I? But I want to encourage you to just enjoy every second if you can. I loved what Brittany shared about being in the moment. It's being in the moment, but looking at them with a sense of wonder. Their eyes, their ears, their little pudgy fingers, you know, the little pudgy arms, the dimples in their arms because the pudge that they're growing out of, the way their hair looks, the way just enjoy them, just enjoy them, especially if you've got a newborn or someone from a year to before the toddler. You just take that time to soak them up and enjoy them and really connect with them. I think it's so easy at times when we're just trying to do that or get that job done, all the other stuff is on our mind. I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and worried about that, worried about that. So when you're spending time with your child and maybe nursing your child, your mind's somewhere else. You're off doing something else. Don't be somewhere else. Be in the moment. And just take up the wonder. There's a human being that God has given you that is going to turn out to be, who's this going to be? What an incredible journey you get to go on with them. So take the time to wonder. And that's what I want to suggest in this first idea. That one of the ways that we're going to cultivate more joy in our parenting is that we see them as the image of God. I'm trying to be in the habit now that when I see my children, because I don't see them very often, they come and go. When I see them, I grab them, and I just look at their face, and I look at their eyes and their hair, and I just take in their face, and I just go, I just feel like you are an amazing person. All the things that you've done, all the things you're trying to do, all the struggles and trials and failures, I get to know you. I get to be your father. That's the greatest job I've got in my life, is to be a dad. And I'd suggest your greatest job is to be a mom. And just look at them with wonder and appreciate, because they are going to be gone someday. You are going to have those moments like I do, where you wish they were back. I talked with a friend of mine yesterday on the phone. His daughter was back for spring break for 3 days. They're empty nesters now like us. He's like, she was only here for 3 days, and she didn't hang out with us. She wanted to be with her friends. I don't get to see her very much. And we just kind of had this pity party with ourselves, like, our kids don't like us anymore. They don't want to be around us, because we miss that season. But we love our kids, we're releasing them, so enjoy the moments that God's giving you. Just look at your kids more and more with wonder as possible. I love those books that kind of work through the firsts, like baby's first tooth, baby's first word, first haircut, first Christmas, first birthday. I wonder if they have the real ones, like baby's first massive blowout diaper. Do you think they have that in a book somewhere, with pictures? What about baby's first bedwetting? Oh, yeah, we all want to remember that one, right? Baby's first vomit stream all over your church dress. Remember how fun that was, right? Baby's first tantrum. We don't like to remember those. Baby's first ear infection. No, we don't think about that. But if we can have the mindset of I'm growing, and I get to be a part and a privilege of seeing the image of God grow in my home. Well, there's a second thing that I want us to think about, second word, and that's the idea, number 2 on your main outline, joy in helping the image of God. Joy in helping the image of God. Not just seeing them with wonder, but actually helping them. And the word there is encourage. That's the word, is encourage. I don't know if you've had this experience, but when I have a chance to help somebody, I kind of walk away a little bit feeling like, that was kind of nice. It was nice that I could help someone. Has anyone had that feeling? Yeah, it's interesting. Our Lord says that it's better to give than to receive. Now, the problem is, as mom, you're giving 100% of the time, and your kids aren't really giving back in the sense of, gee, Mom, what a great job you're doing, right? Mom, I love the way you made that sandwich. It was just perfect, Mom, Mom, I love how you just spend time reading me. But they don't say that, do they? So you're constantly giving, constantly giving. But the idea is that when we can get the mindset of how is it that I can help my kids, and that doesn't mean every day and every moment, because you're going to have hard moments, hard seasons. But if I can start to get my head around how can I help them, then I'm trying to see in a better spot. I'm not just trying to make them do it the right way or just get them to behave, but how can I actually help them grow and develop and become more the person that God's made them to be? How can I help them learn how to cooperate with our family? How can I help them learn how we work as a family? How can I help them learn how to live outside of the family? Because all of us want our kids to leave our homes, right? First of all, we want them to leave, right? We don't want them coming back. How many you want your kids at home until they're 35? Does anybody? No, none of us do. We want to help them leave. We want to help them become successful. We want to help them navigate the world, right? So let's take on the joy in doing that. We want to help you become more successful. So I want you to flip over to this page called Principles of Encouragement. And there's a lot on here. I want to highlight some things. And again, my goal is just try to read some things that hopefully, if anything on here makes you go, wow, I'm going to come back to that, you've skimmed it, okay? So that's the big idea. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of my favorites, really old, classic, black and white film comes on at Christmas. And what's interesting is a story about this guy who had a lot of aspirations, and they didn't really go his way at all. And so the scene opens where there's a conversation going on in heaven between God the Father and some angels, and don't really know exactly how that works out scripturally, but I know that he communicates. God does communicate with his angels. But they're trying to help this guy. And the lead angel says, well, that's the problem, because the guy that's supposed to help him he's not a really good angel. He's not really good at this. And so he calls this angel in, a guy named Clarence, and starts to explain to Clarence, hey, there's a problem with the guy that you're supposed to work with named George Bailey, yeah. And the angel says, is he sick? And the voice of God says, no, it's worse. He's discouraged. And that's what's so amazing about us as human beings. I don't know about you, but when I get discouraged, I get down. I really get down. I think bad about myself. I compare myself to people. I never measure up. I start to feel like I can never do it. I'll never be able to get there. I'll never be able to grow. And the more I say those things, and the more those tapes go in my head, I get worse and worse and worse. I get discouraged. And you know what? Is our kids feel the exact same way. Why? Because they're the image of God too. They were designed to see themselves do something and do something well and find success and get good at something. And when they don't, they get discouraged. And so one of the things that we can do is encourage them, to encourage them. This is a real interesting quote by this is a secular guy, but what's interesting, if you're familiar with the book Love and Logic, The guys who wrote Love and Logic got their stuff from this guy. His name is Rudolf Dreikurs. He says, encouragement is more important than any other aspect of child raising. I would say prayer is the most important, but I understand what he's trying to say. It is so important that the lack of it can be considered the basic cause for misbehavior. A misbehaving child is a discouraged child. Each child needs continuous encouragement just as a plant needs water. He cannot grow and develop and gain a sense of belonging without encouragement, without feeling like I matter. It's good that I'm here. Someone's noticing me. Somebody sees me. We all need that as human beings, and our kids need it just as well. So this is what I want us to think a little bit about. When we think about the idea of helping our kids, I want to suggest this one simple idea of encouragement. There's a lot of things we can do, but I want to just drill down a little bit and think about encouragement. And as we go through this, I want to suggest that as you kind of learn this and start thinking about this, that as you start practicing this, you're going to start to see a little bit more joy because you're going to feel like, wow, I'm really helping my child. And you know what you're going to see is you're going to see a different kind of connection with your kid. Let's walk through some of this. The definition is there. Here are some purposes for encouragement. It's really to enable our kids to discover and live out with confidence who God's made them to be. All right? And I just want to skim this. So here's some things that will help. You can read about those. What are some principles of encouragement? Well, first is that a child's value is based on who they are, not on how well they do something. Remember, all of us want to have our efforts appreciated, don't we? We all want that. And so encouragement is based on that. It's saying that I notice you and what you do. I'm not looking at how well you do something and judging you. I'm looking at the fact that you're doing something, trying something, and I want to talk about you. I don't want to evaluate how it turned out. Does that make sense? So it starts with remembering our kids have value and dignity, not because they did something well, not because they cooperate perfectly, because they belong to God. They're God's image. This is why the author says, when a child makes a mistake or fails to accomplish a certain goal, we must avoid any word or action which indicates that we consider him a failure. We need to separate the deed from the doer. We must have it clear in our own minds that each failure, so to speak, indicates only a lack of skill and in no way affects the value of the person. Courage is found in the one who can make a mistake and fail without feeling lowered in self-esteem. Wow, isn't that a statement? This courage to be imperfect is equally needed by children and adults. Without it, discouragement is inevitable. Encouragement, then, is the continuous process aimed at giving the child a sense of self-respect and a sense of accomplishment. I know that hits me because this idea that courage to be imperfect is something I've been working on for a really long time because I'm a perfectionist. Words matter to me. I just kind of get a little crazy. Matter of fact, my wife and I were having a fight about this, and she was talking about the fact that I'm a perfectionist, and she called me a perfectionist. I said, I'm not a perfectionist. I have perfectionistic tendencies. And that's a hyphenated word, by the way, honey. That's a hyphenated word, okay? So the thing is, for me to learn how to be okay to fail has been a long journey. Because if I don't get it right, what am I? A failure. And what I need to realize is there's a whole range. Hey, you tried something and you didn't do it. You tried something again and you didn't do it. And you try it again. You know what we call it when you try something and you kind of fail a little and you try it and you fail a little bit and try and fail at it? You know what we call that? It's called learning. That's all it is. It's learning. And you have children from birth to 5 years old and beyond. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to figure out how to live life. They're trying to figure out how to carry a glass of milk. They're trying to figure out how to put their Legos away. They're trying to figure out how to clean up their room. They don't know how to do this yet. And so we can come along and encourage them and help them. And help them realize that, yeah, you're not going to do it right, but we can do it together. And you can grow and you can get better. And that's the same for you as moms. I don't know, how many of you read 2 or 3 books about being a mom before you were a mom? Yeah, very small number of people. When did you start learning how to be a mom? When you became a mom, right? And so the thing is, we all need the encouragement to know that we can get better at this. Well, the second principle is that a child feels loved and empowered when we notice them. In other words, when we report what you see. Another quote, encouragement is the process whereby you focus on the assets and strengths of your child to build self-confidence and self-esteem. Encouragement helps your children believe in themselves and their abilities. Parents who encourage their courage help their children develop the courage to be imperfect. They help their kids learn that they can be in process. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have fails. We can keep trying, and we can keep learning, and we can keep growing. And that's the same thing for us. Our youngest daughter, Sydney, is a basketball player. She plays Division I basketball at UC Davis, and it's been fun to be on this journey with her. They just lost their championship, which I won't get into because it really bothers me, so I'll be quiet. Anyway, so as she was going through some of the different camps and the different teams and so on, my wife and I are saying, hey, do we invest in this? What if it doesn't go anywhere? We never said, honey, we'll invest in this if you only get a scholarship. We never did that. We're like, God, we don't know if we have the money to do this, and we don't know where it's going to go. What we do know is our daughter loves basketball, and she's good at it. So let's just encourage her to keep playing this. And so one season, there was a coach that she met at a summer camp who lived in Lake Oswego, and we said, hey, would you like to work with him 5 or 6 sessions? So we paid for some private lessons. So since she was only like an 8th grader, freshman year, I'm like, okay, I'm hanging out with you guys. We're going to get the high school gym. The only way I can get it is I'm there as the dad. So I'm watching them work it out. I'm just kind of fascinated. I didn't play basketball in college or high school, or, I'm not an athlete that way. I like to do stuff. But I'm watching them, and it's just the two of them working out. And this guy, Edward, keeps saying to Sydney, Sydney, I see you. I see you, Sydney. And they're going back and forth, and they're doing this drill. He goes, Sydney, I see you. I see you. I'm like, hey, idiot, I see her too. I mean, come on, she's right there. What do you mean you see her? Like, you're not blind. I mean, I just didn't get what he was trying to do, and then it just dawned on me. What he's saying is, I see your effort. I see your hustle. I see that you are trying to do something. And you know what that did to my daughter? To know that someone just sees that she's working hard. You know what it made her do? She wanted to work harder because she was getting the right kind of attention. And see, we can give our kids the right kind of attention or the wrong kind of attention. Our kids can do stuff that acts up and gets kind of crazy because they need our attention, so they're going to find maybe a bad way to get our attention, or we can find good ways to give our kids attention. And encouragement is about finding those good ways to give our kids that attention that says, I see you. You matter to me. You make a difference. And so I'm not reading all these. I just want to look on the next page. So what are some things that we can see in our kids? One is recognize their positive behaviors. When they do something well, say it. I really like the way you asked your sister nicely to use the crayons. Now think about that second. If your kids are just playing there together and you're like, nothing's going wrong, you can kind of go, I'm glad nothing's going wrong. Or you can look at that and watch the way they're playing. And if they're playing well, acknowledge that. And say, guys, I just love the way that you're playing so nicely together. You know what it might make them think about? Hey, let's play nicely together again, because look how mom notices us, Catch your kids doing something right and notice their behaviors. That was a nice way to ask for what you wanted. Here's just some suggestions. Another one is to draw attention to their efforts. Not how well it turned out, but their efforts. You worked really hard on getting your books picked up. Okay, maybe they put them in backwards. Don't start with all the things they didn't do right. Start with the fact that, hey, you worked really hard to get those books put together. Would you like some help? And you're trying to help them in that process, but you notice what they're doing. You are so close to being able to tie your own shoes. It's not like, hey, you're not doing it right. No, this isn't the way you do it. Stop doing that. Here, let me do it. See, when we send messages to our kids, we're saying, you can't do this. You don't know what you're doing. I can only do it for you. We want to help our kids know that you can do this. So that's where we notice or draw attention to their efforts. We point out their improvements, okay? Things like, you're getting so much better at brushing your teeth. Remember what it's like to brush your teeth? And when you watch your kids brush their teeth, they're like this. They do, I'm done, Mom. It's like, no, you're not. You got to work harder. It takes time to get coordinated, doesn't it? So help our kids see that we see them. Gosh, it seems like you're getting really better on that left side and on that right side. Because when we notice things and they're improving, they like, somebody sees me. Somebody notices me. And they feel loved and encouraged that way. By noticing their accomplishments. By appreciating their unsolicited contributions. Here's one. Putting all your dirty clothes in the hamper helps mommy so much. Thank you. Thank you for helping set the table for dinner. You made it go much faster. That's so nice of you to comfort your baby sister. Like if you're just nursing your child and your other child comes over and just trying to give them some comfort, call it out. Say, thank you. That is so nice of you to comfort baby brother, baby sister. Appreciate their solicited cooperation. When you're asking for help, it's not like, well, of course they're going to do it. I told them to. I'm not going to say thank you. They're only doing what I said they're supposed to do. It's like, do you like to be treated that way? Don't you like to be appreciated when you do something for someone? So here's just a way to remember that. Thank you for picking up your socks like I asked you. Thank you for bringing me brother's new diaper. Thank you for getting your pajamas on. I would just suggest, this list I know can feel a little overwhelming. I don't mean it to be. I don't want to stack you up with more things you're not doing. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to expand an idea, an understanding of ways you can encourage. I would simply suggest that you start with saying thank you. I'm sure most of you are doing that. Keep doing that. But keep doing it genuinely. Keep seeing that, wow, they are really making a genuine contribution. They really are helping. Even if they help imperfectly and they drop something along the way, remember they're little people. They're trying to figure this out. They're trying to grow. And so for you to call that out and say so would be just something that helps. So encourage them. The third word, not only that we wonder or that we encourage, but the third word is that we persevere. That we persevere. And perseverance, simple way to define that, is continuance in a course of action despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. I want to ask by a show of hands, in your parenting, have you found difficulty or delay in getting things done or getting them to behave and cooperate? Anybody found difficulty or delay? Hello. Isn't that kind of the essence of being a mom, is nothing gets done, nothing gets clean, nothing gets put back, okay? So how many of you are achieving cooperation, perfect cooperation with your kids 100% of the time? Raise your hands. Nobody are they? That's why we have to persevere. You're not raising a German Shepherd. You're raising the image of God, who have their own wills, who have their own stubbornness, who have their own sinfulness, who have their own learning curve. They know nothing. They're learning everything. You're older. You've been to school, okay? You know how things work. They don't. So you've got to persevere. And the thing is, because you, ladies, are the image of God, you have to take care of yourself. You have to care for yourself. You're giving constantly. So you've got to work with other moms here. That's why this is so amazingly beautiful, that you can take care of yourself, to check in once a month with some other moms around the table and see you're not the only one struggling. That's beautiful. You need to talk with your husband if you're married and say, hey, how do we work this out to where I can get a little more of a break or time, or we work parenting together better. You've got to take care of your nutrition as you can. All of these things, why? Because you're the image of God. You are valuable. Your worth does not come from how well your kids behave. It doesn't. Your worth does not come from how you look compared to other moms. It doesn't come from that. Your worth comes from the fact that you are made in the image of God. God has blessed you with the incredible privilege and responsibility to raise the image of God in your home. That's a huge deal. So for you to keep persevering, keep persisting, keep going through all the difficulty, that's what's needed. See, your kids don't need a perfect mom. They don't. Your kids need their mom. They need you. Not to get it together, not to fix yourself to become perfect. They just need you. And as you're in the journey of learning about your relationship with God, as you're in the journey of growing in your parent skills, right? Some of you have been parents for just a few years. How can you expect to know everything in a few years? Be nice to yourself. Like if you're with a fellow mom and you're talking and they're sharing something, would you ever say to them, well, that was a stupid thing to do to your kid? Why would you say that? Man, you totally blew that. You know what you should have done? How many of you would really say that to your friend? You wouldn't. But how many of you say it to yourself? Every one of you. You're too hard on yourselves. God's never designed you to be perfect. You're a finite human being. You don't know everything. You can't do everything. That's why you need community. That's why you need God's help. That's why you need to give yourself patience to persevere. Well, I think that if we can actually try to get a little more wonder thinking of our kids and be amazed at them and where they're headed and what they're like, is the more we can learn to be helpful to them and encourage them. They'll respond to us a little differently when they feel like, wow, mom sees me, mom notices me, mom cares about me. And I think when we just learn to keep persevering in this difficult thing, I think we can find joy in this journey. Because our joy is robbed when we don't hit perfection, when we don't and when our kids don't. And that's why one of the most practical things I would suggest is to get off social media. I mean, I'm an old fuddy-duddy, sorry, I'm an older guy, but I would just strongly encourage you to really limit that, because the whole thing is about comparison. It's about what you're not. And not only is the upswing of anxiety and stress with young women going crazy, I would suggest it's also young moms. Because if you're always looking at somebody else who seems to have it done right, you're just going to be under a huge pile. So as much as you can, limit that. I want to end with a video clip, and this is taken from a really wonderful movie that my wife and I love. It's called Temple Grandin, and it's a story about this gal, Temple Grandin, who back in the early 60s was diagnosed with autism. And nobody really understood what autism was. And so the thing was that Temple would never allow her mom to hug her. She could never have affection with her mom. She was just quirky. She didn't respond to her mom. She was just a really, really difficult child to raise. But her mom kept working really hard to find the right schools, to keep working. But the mom just struggled for the longest time because she never made this connection, an emotional connection, even a relational connection, because her autistic child was just so different. And so where the movie ends is that Temple is now an adult, and they go to this autism convention, because now autism is something that people are talking about. And for the very first time, it's like, hey, what is this thing? So she and her mom go to this convention to hear what they have to say. So I think this could work. Yeah? Sounds like we are.
I don't know that I want to hear from any more experts.
Will you please let me finish? With intensive psychotherapy, an autistic child can be
The
treated.
Rimland report plainly shows that autism is not a psychological
I
problem.
am not familiar with the Rimland report.
Calm down, sweetie. Sweetie, calm down.
It would be better if you
Calm
could
down.
get her to sit calmly. You're trying to control her.
But we were told self-stimming is good. It eventually calms them.
Self-stimming? That's self-comforting.
Self-stimulation, rocking, spinning, rolling on the floor, flapping.
I think spinning is good. And rolling, too. Self-stimulation does seem to eventually calm the nervous system. It can be a way to compensate for not being held. And being held by another person is scary, but rolling or being held by surfaces produces the calming effect that ordinary children get from a hug.
How old's your child?
Well, I don't have children. No, I'm autistic. And I need the sensation of being hugged. And I've developed a machine that I get into and hugs me, and I'm different afterwards. I'm more social. Well, I didn't speak until I was 4. Now I have a BA and a master's, and I'm studying for my doctorate.
Please don't shout. Please don't shout.
Most autistic people are very sensitive to sounds and colors. Overstimulation hurts. You know, people talking too much at once, can cause us to panic.
How did you get cured?
Well, I'm not cured. I'll always be autistic. My mother refused to believe that I wouldn't speak. And when I learned to speak, she made me go to school. And in school and at home, manners and rules were really important. They were pounded into me. I was lucky. All these things worked for me. Everyone worked hard to make sure that I was engaged. And they knew I was different, but not less. I had a gift. I could see the world in a new way. I could see details that other people were blind to. My mother pushed me to become self-sufficient. I worked summers at my aunt's ranch, went to boarding school and college. Those things were uncomfortable for me at first, but they helped me to open doors to new worlds.
Excuse me, please, but we want to hear everything.
You know, I love that movie because it just really underscores the fact that this mom who'd worked so hard and went unnoticed for so long was finally recognized by her daughter for all that she'd done that she'd never really appreciated and could understand. And ladies, you're doing the same thing. You're doing something really, really hard. You're raising the image of God in your home, in a culture that's really dark. And I just want you to know, just as you are looking to see your children, God sees you. He sees you. He knows your struggles. He knows your trials. He knows your joys. And he wants to be with you on this journey as you persevere, as you help, and as you wonder about your kids. Let me pray for us, and then we're going to go to your tables for some discussion, okay? Father, thank you for this morning to just have a different perspective of our children. They're still difficult. There are still things we don't understand. There's things that really frustrate us. There's things we wish were different. There's things we wish we could grow and learn in. But we're so grateful that you've considered us and given us the privilege to have the front row seat to watch the image of God grow in our families. So I pray that you would encourage these moms to just cultivate more wonder with their kids, to learn little by little how to encourage them more. And Lord, help them to persevere. Help them to enjoy the support of this room and their friends. And help them to lean more on you, to ask you and your Spirit to help them day to day be the moms they want to be and they can be with your help. In Jesus' name, amen. So I think we go to